Hi guys, the Metal Maniac back again. Yeah, I'm still waiting for a bunch of albums to arrive, but since I'm waiting, I have more time to get out these horror movie franchise rankings. And in this video, I'm gonna be ranking the Mummy franchise. So yeah, that means the Universal Mummy movies, the Brendan Fraser trilogy, and the movie from the 1959, the Hammer horror mummy movie, and then the newest one from Universal. And no, I will not be including the I'll not be including crossovers or spin-offs. So I will not be including Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy or the Scorpion King films. Just the main series of mummy films. All right, there are 9 movies to rank. This might be a longer video, so I'm just going to get into it. At number 9 is the Dark Universe Mummy film from 2018. Yeah, I mean, just from the start, even from when I just first saw the trailer back in early was it early 2018 that the trailer was released, or maybe it was 2017 that it was released. I don't know. I've completely forgotten. But just from the very moment I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh boy. Here's another company rebooting their old stuff. Just like with Disney rebooting all those classics. Looks like Universal is going to reboot all their classic horror films. And like, oh no. And then I saw it, and my suspicions were correct. It was just basically them trying to cash in on their already existing stuff, and the movie wasn't too well. I mean, the movie was terrible. The plot made no sense. The characters were forgettable. The villain was just absolutely just really just dull and just boring. The CGI in it was pretty bad. I mean, I don't think they even used any practical effects now that I think about it. And it just was a clear cash grab, you know. It was a very much like they're like, oh, what's popular? Oh, the older stuff was popular. Let's reboot that, you know. It's kind of like I don't know. It's just like uh, I don't know. A lot of movie companies these days are instead of making new stuff that's good, they fall back on their older stuff and then reboot it because some reason they are probably just I don't know. It just seems like these companies just run out of ideas. Mm. But yeah, the 2018 Mummy film is very forgettable, an awful film, and it's the worst Mummy film ever. Um. All right, moving on. Number 9. Oh, I'm on my list here. Number 9 is The Mummy's Curse from 1944. This is the last sequel in the original line of Universal Mummy movies from the 30s to 40s, and it's the worst of them. The last one is the worst. At this point, they were running out of ideas. Well, when they were in their original run, at this point they were just out of ideas. It's the plot of the movie is basically a rehash of like the last 2 sequels. Just with things changed a little bit here and there. Slightly different characters and all that. It's changed enough to where it can be passed off as its own thing as a sequel. But yeah, the main plot is the same plot as the last 2 films. Old Egyptian cult priest gets too old and is about to die, so he gets his sidekick slash grandson or whatever to get revenge on like archaeologists, and he uses the mummy of Karis to do so. Yeah, same plot as the last 2 films. So yeah, they just rehashed a lot of stuff, and it was not only did they rehash a lot of stuff. The very last sequel of the original Mummy Universal Mummy run came out the same year as the sequel before it. 1944 had 2 Mummy sequels from Universal. Yeah, that only just proves that they were very desperate in terms of wanting to get something that's successful out there, or just wanting more money because at this point in the series run of the original series, the franchise wasn't doing so well. But yeah, the Mummy's Curse from 1944 is a very, very bad film. Number 8 is The Mummy's Ghost, the other 1944 sequel. Yeah, it has the same, like, the movie before it has the same overall plot, so I don't need to explain that again. So yeah, it used the same plot, and this movie used the same plot as what other one was it? Sorry, I always get the last few of these sequels confused. Um, yeah, it uses the same plot as the sequel before it. Again, old Egyptian priest about to die. It gets his son to wreak vengeance on archaeologists using the mummy. But yeah, it's just another forgettable sequel. Not much to say about it. All right, number 7, The Mummy: Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, the third and final entry in the Brendan Fraser Mummy trilogy, and it's the worst of them. I mean, I get that they want to do something different, so and I kind of get that, but it's just very bland. Like, it's not forgettable, but it is bland. It just feels like. Here's the thing: it took so long for the sequel to finally be released in theaters. Like, seriously, the second movie in the Brendan Fraser Mummy trilogy was released in 2002. And this movie, hold on, I forgot to show this, but this movie was released in 2008, so a 7 year gap until this film. And while it is a good film in some aspects, it does feel it really, even though it's a good film in some aspects, I do like the actions. I do like the action scenes. The action scenes are really, really good, and I guess the story of the villain is sort of cool, but everything else is just sort of bland, and just not really thought out too well. And the characters themselves, like, they actually replaced the original actress who played Evie in the first two Brendan Fraser Mummy films. I don't know if she didn't want to return or if, like, she wanted too much money or something. But yeah, so the original actress was replaced with someone else. Um, I but yeah, it's just it's good. It's a very, very, very mixed bag. It's good and okay with some stuff, but it's really not forgettable, or very bland and just meh with others. Um, but yeah, that's at number 7. At number 6 is The Mummy's Tomb from 1942. This one is the first of the wait, is it the first of the Yeah, it's the first of the Universal Mummy sequels to have that plot of, that plot that was reused uh, 3 more times. It was reused 3 more times, but this was the first one, so I can give it a little bit of slack. This was the first one to use. It was the first one of the sequels to use that plot, so I can give it a bit of slack. I mean, it's okay. I don't mind it. I mean, it's not a great sequel, but it's not terrible either. It's just sort of okay. Nothing really much to say about it. Um, Although I do really like. I do really like how in this one, the ending of the movie ends in, like, this mansion, um, and basically these guys are going after the mummy, and, like, in the process of trying to uh, 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 try to stop him, the house burns down, but then it burns down with the mummy inside. um I don't know, I always like that ending. It kind of, like, feels very epic. um but yeah, that's at number 6. All right, at number 5, At number 5 is The Mummy Returns. A very solid sequel. Okay, we're getting into the good stuff now. From numbers 5 to 1 are good to great films, you know? And this is a really good film. It's a really solid sequel. All the acting's very, very good. The only problem I have with this film is near the end with the Scorpion King. He was very underused as a main villain. Well, I mean, I guess Imhotep's still the main villain, but the Scorpion King could have had a little bit more screen time. And oh my god, he could have had such a better, more polished, more finished CGI design. Like CGI on the Scorpion King in this film. Yeah, that's the thing everyone complains about. Yeah, I do agree. The CGI is terrible. It doesn't even look finished. Like, it looks like the people that did the CGI for the Scorpion King were rushed. Like, they had a time limit or something. But, yeah, other than that little thing, that little bad part of the film, everything else is actually pretty good. I also like how, like, unlike the first one, even though I like the first one, yeah, unlike the first one, how the first one, for the most part, from like the midsection of the movie to the end, it all takes place in all one place. It all takes place in the tomb. Like, yeah, it goes to Cairo and stuff like that. But for the majority of the film, it takes place in Hamnatra and in the tomb. Whereas this one, like this one takes place multiple different places, like even more than the first one. Yeah, the first one you go, the places are in there like Cairo, the actual Hamnatra, you know, stuff like that. But it has even more locations. Like you have the Oasis, you have like a out in the desert, like the old ruins. And it goes to there's a setting in London. Like this just has a lot more locations, and I think that's really really cool. But yeah, that's at number 5. At number 4 is the very first sequel to was it the very first? Yeah, it's the very first sequel to the first Universal Mummy film, and the sequel is The Mummy's Hand from 1940. This is the best of the sequels, and in my opinion, it's the best of any Mummy sequel, or any Mummy sequel. It has a really good plot. The characters are really fleshed out, and just like the characters are great, the acting's great, the plot's great, the setting, the set design, everything is really good about the sequel. I don't know. I haven't actually seen a lot of the Universal sequels in a long, 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 long time, and more particularly the Mummy ones, because there's so much I like for like the least like 2-3 years now. There's just so much of a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies I have to catch up on that I haven't seen yet. That is just I haven't had time to go back and watch some stuff. But yeah, this is definitely the best of the sequels. I don't know why it's called The Mummy's Hand. I don't know, but I mean it's a weird title, kind of like with The Mummy's Ghost. Like I already mentioned The Mummy's Ghost, so I'm not gonna go back into it, but I will mention that the title doesn't make sense because the mummy isn't a ghost. He's the mummy. He's a mummy. He's not a ghost. So I don't know why it's called The Mummy's Ghost. Anyway, back to The Mummy's Hand. This one, I think the setting and just the overall plot is what really makes this enjoyable for me. Um, Basically, these archaeologists go to this dig site, and they discover a tomb, and it just so happens to be the tomb of a lost princess, but it also happens to be guarded by not only the mummy. Oh, and this is the first film to not feature. This is the first of the Universal Mummy films to not feature Imhotep. It's actually Karis, I think. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Karis. But yeah, that mummy that would be featured throughout the rest of the series. But he not only he's guarding the tomb, but there's this old Egyptian priestess. I think it's the priestess featured in the other ones, but he's sort of guarding the tomb as well. And then they find the tomb and they open it up, and then the Egyptian priest is angry that they desecrated the tomb. Oh, in his eyes, they desecrated the tomb. They're just, exploring. They're really trying to preserve history. But he's pissed off. So he basically is like, he just goes out and like he's just I guess he warns them first, like you desecrated the tomb. I know. I guess he tries to like warn them, and like maybe I don't know, but he doesn't do too much at first. But then like they just ignore him or like just scoff it off. So he's like, okay, well, cursing time. He's like he just sends the mummy out to kill them one by one. But um. Yeah, it's just a great sequel. Um. Anyway, at number three is The Mummy from 1999, the first of the Brendan Fraser trilogy. This is actually the very first Mummy film I ever saw. I believe this was back around, I don't know. Don't remember the year I saw this one, but this is one of the very first, at least one of the very first PG-13 horror films that I saw. I know this is the first PG-13 horror film or film in general. So this was quite a few, like this was years ago that I first saw this, but it was definitely the very first Mummy horror film that I saw. Not the first horror film I saw in general, but yeah, the very first Mummy one. And I was blown away. Like I just instantly fell in love with this film. But yeah, I mean the acting, yeah, it can be over the top at times, especially with the guy who plays Evie's brother, and then the warding guy also is a bit over the top. But I mean, it's over the top in a very tasteful and funny way. Like they do it, but they know when. It almost seems like they knew when to not overdo it too much, you know. And it's also a movie where it feels like it's kind of goofy in places, and it knows that. It's very self-aware of how goofy it can get at times. Like, one of my favorite scenes, like, I always laugh at, is when they're in the museum, and like all these brainwashed citizens of Cairo like are in this like zombie horde of sorts, and they're like marching towards the museum, trying to capture the main characters, while Imhotep's sort of standing in the background, sort of just watching the chaos unfold. And then Jonathan goes out because he's trying to start the car, right? He's trying to start the car so they could just make a getaway. But then the zombie horde comes up, and then like they're all like Imhotep. Imhotep, and then Jonathan like he tries to blend in, so he just like they run towards him, but all of a sudden he's just like Imhotep, Imhotep. So they just pass him, like they just pass him. He's just like Imhotep, It's like his stupidness of that situation saved his life. I always thought that was really funny. Um, but yeah, just a really great film, and I absolutely love it. Um. Anyway, at number two is The Mummy from 1959. This movie was part of the Hammer horror series, and it was the only I think it was the only mummy related film from that, because there was a lot of Dracula stuff. There were a lot of Dracula movies. There were a lot of Frankenstein movies. Um, Even I think a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde one, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe one or two of those, but they only ever did one mummy film, which is kind of surprising considering a lot. Yeah, I even think a lot of their monster movies, especially with the sequels, for the most part, are way better than a lot of the Universal monster movie sequels. Again, for the most part. But getting back to the 1959 Mummy film, um, it's really good. They actually take plot elements, and just story elements from a couple of the more kind of terrible Mummy sequels from the Universal franchise, but make them good. Like they take the whatever kind of good elements and make them really good. And I also like Christopher Lee as the Mummy. He does a really good job. He's very menacing, and just how like and he's not super tall like Boris Karloff, but he was pretty tall. I mean, yeah, again, not as tall as Boris Karloff, but still pretty tall for the most part. Like I guess he was slightly taller than the average person. But I don't know. I guess just the way they filmed him made him look taller than he actually was, even though he's still again pretty tall. Um, and just his imposing stature and just the dead silence. Like he had no speaking role. Again, he was the mummy, but just his dead silence and then his stare with his eyes, almost like Boris Karloff. But yeah, it's just a really, really good film. Definitely one of the best Hammer horror films. But yeah, it's just a really, really good film. I really need to get that one. Have seen it multiple times, but still don't own it. I don't know why. um, but yeah, and at number one, the best mummy film is the original from 1932. What, 32? Yeah, 32. This is, in my opinion, Boris Karloff's best performance ever. Yeah, he does a really amazing job in as the Frankenstein's monster from the original Frankenstein film, and he does a good job in everything he ever was in. But this is definitely his best performance. Yeah, it was actually his first speaking role, but he even though like a lot certain actors in here clearly weren't cut out for speaking roles or just weren't used to them. Because again, this was early 30s, so talkies were just starting to be a thing. But yeah, I mean, Boris Karloff carries this movie. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, well, the other characters are good. They're like characters where they're not like, uh, um, I don't feel like they push the movie forwards. If that's the best way I could put it. The only other character that I think pushes the movie forwards is the professor guy, who also played Professor Van Helsing in the 1931 Dracula film from Universal. But yeah, I mean, Boris Karloff just makes this movie absolutely amazing, and just the cinematography is awesome too. The set design, the design of Boris Karloff, his mummy makeup, and even though it was only like one scene, still looks really, really good. And then his disguise as Imhotep is really cool too. And the guy, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I mentioned a little bit, but Boris Karloff was super tall for his time. You know, like he was really tall. Like if you look, there's this one scene, like I guess the first scene where you see him as Imhotep, like non-mummified Imhotep, when he's in his sort of like human disguise. Um, but yeah, his human disguise. What was it called? Oh yeah. He was his fake name, Imhotep's fake name is cover identity, Ardith Bay. You can see like the first time you see him, like like there's this like shack. The door opens, or the house. The door opens up, and he's in the doorway, and he almost had because the door is, I guess, regular size or slightly taller. His head almost touches the top of the doorway. He's so tall. I don't know how tall he was, but he was definitely a lot taller than most, well, slightly more taller than most people, back in the day. Um, but yeah, so that's about it, for this ranking in this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.